Right before we started the show, are we timely or what? The verdict in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard defamation trial came down. Now, I haven't spent very much time at all watching it. I mean, if you're watching enough news channels as I do, you can't help but watch part of it. And I noticed some people were rooting for Johnny Depp. Some people were rooting against Johnny Depp. I don't have a dog in that fight. All I know is this. When I watch people pick the side of Johnny Depp or not against Johnny Depp, I recall something that this man once said about President Donald J. Trump. Check this out.
It's just a question. I'm not insinuating anything. By the way, this is going to be in the press. It'll be horrible. But I'd like that you're all a part of it. When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
Notice the cheers. The president in question, of course, was one Abraham Lincoln. And here he is speculating, when was the last time an actor assassinated? I'm not saying anything. This is going to make the media. So I put him on my list then. As far as his Pirates of the Caribbean movies, look, I'm not in his demo. He's not in mine. I suppose if I were 10 or 11 or 12, I would have enjoyed the Jack Sparrow stuff. But I watched part of it one time, and the guy just seemed drunk. So, as far as I'm concerned, I don't care one way or the other. But if you watch the verdict, it appears to be almost a clean slam dunk for Johnny Depp, because she has to pay him $15 million, although I understand there's some sort of cap on punitive damages, and she has to pay him $2 million. The point is, it appears that his reputation has been resurrected. But in all the time I've watched excerpts of the trial and people analyzing it, no one has said one word about the hideous thing this actor said about President Donald Trump. Yesterday, David Horowitz and I were talking about the 20 bonehead, angry, hate monger actors. I don't know whether or not Johnny Depp made the cut on numbers 1 through 10. We only did numbers 10 through 20. All I know is that what a vulgar, hideous thing to say, and to laugh about it, and essentially to joke about the assassination of arguably America's greatest president ever, Abraham Lincoln. Now, later on in the program, we're going to talk to Dave Kopel, who's an expert on the Second Amendment. Why? Because Joe Biden said this.
Remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute. You couldn't buy a cannon when the Second Amendment was passed. You couldn't go out and purchase a lot of weapons.
You couldn't buy a cannon when the Second Amendment was ratified. Really? Let's find out what Mr. Kopel says about that in just a few minutes, so please stick around for that. Now, I have a message. For all my friends, a couple of whom I've known for 40 years, who no longer talk to me because of Donald Trump, after almost a year and a half of the most incompetent, most brain dead, most morally bankrupt presidency in my lifetime, if not in history. I'm referring, of course, to the Biden administration, whether it's inflation, and he's blaming it on Putin, blaming it on COVID, blaming it on everybody but the great white pumpkin, whether it's the borders, having reversed all of Donald Trump's racist policies, whether it's the disastrous withdrawal of Afghanistan, which clearly encouraged Vladimir Putin, whether it's demonizing the police, which has caused the police to pull back in city after city after city, causing hundreds, if not thousands, of so-called excess deaths, whether it's inflation, all the money he has spent to pay people not to work, the most incompetent, brain dead, bad policy administration I've ever seen. After you watch 18 months of this person's administration, all you people that have no longer talking to me because I support Donald Trump, I have one final message for you.
Give my remarks to all of the Trump haters, all of the Hillary Clinton supporters, all of the people that said that my Trump was gonna lose. So I say to you this morning, the day after the election, I can't breathe.
The only addendum, of course, is that it's not funny. It's not funny that people are seeing their raises outpaced by inflation. It's not funny all those military personnel who died in Afghanistan, the sacrifice of the men and women literally washed down the tube because this man precipitously pulled out of Afghanistan. It's not funny what's going on the borders. Some 1.6 million, if not nearly 2 million illegal aliens are now inside the interior. We have no idea who they are, where they're going, or whether or not they're going to show up for their court date. But for judges resisting Joe Biden, who wanted to repeal Title 42 and wanted to repeal the Stay in Mexico program, the borders would be in even worse shape. These things are not funny. But for crying out loud, if you have not rethought your hatred of Donald Trump after watching this brain dead man stumble through the presidency for the last 18 months, you're the moron. Now, there's an article in NBC, headline, "Inside a Biden White House Adrift." We're going to analyze this article, but just think about the headline. Inside a Biden White House adrift. The White House is just adrift. It was put in water and it was just kind of went where the current went, and Biden had no control over any of all this. It's just adrift. Adrift implies that his policies had nothing whatever to do with the fact that he has the lowest approval ratings of any president since they've been taking polling numbers within the first year and a half of his administration. And this despite having a media that leans over backwards to avoid pounding on this guy. Until the Michael Sussman trial came down, the verdict came down, which we're going to talk to later on, the media pretty much ignored it. Why? Because had he been found guilty, it would have confirmed everything Donald Trump said, and that is that this election was rigged. That Michael Sussman, by the way, at the behest of the Hillary campaign, as was said by her campaign manager, Robbie Mook, he testified under oath, Hillary approved going to the FBI, even though they had no idea whether or not this information was bogus and couldn't have cared less. Not even covered. And how many times did Biden say that inflation was transitory? Did he get hammered? No. How many times did Jen Psaki call it transitory? Did she get hammered? No. And when Biden proposed Build Back Better, and it was evaluated by the Congressional Budget Office, and they said it would increase inflation, increase the debt, increase the deficit, all of a sudden the CBO was no longer the gold standard. Did Biden get hammered? No. Was Biden dogged the way Donald Trump was for the entirety of his presidency? No. Did 25% of the Republican congressional delegation not show up for Biden's inauguration the way 25% of Democrats did not show up for Donald Trump's inauguration? No. So he's been getting as favorable a coverage as you could possibly get, and still his approval numbers are in the toilet. He's even now underwater among blacks, underwater among Hispanics, even underwater against California. California. Joe Biden is now underwater in California. But the White House is just adrift, says NBC, a network, by the way, that's hired race hustling Al Sharpton and bigot, race mongering, Joy and Reid. I'll get back to that in a second. But we're going to take a break. We come back. We're going to speak to Dave Kopel about Joe Biden's assertion that when the Second Amendment was ratified, there couldn't be private ownership of a cannon. Really? Don't go away. Fear of out-of-control inflation is hammering the stock market. The S&P 500 having its worst start to the year since World War II. So, not only are your savings worth less, you now have less of it. Now might be a good time for you to diversify into gold, the most stable asset in the history of the world. And Birch Gold is the only company I trust to help you convert your IRA or your 401k into an IRA in gold and silver. And that's right. Not only will Birch Gold help you fortify your savings, and I mean with precious metals, they will help you do this in a tax-sheltered account. So do me a favor, will you? Go to larryforgold.com to get a free zero obligation info kit on holding gold in a tax-sheltered account. Now, my next guest is Dave Kopel. Dave Kopel is a research director and Second Amendment project director at the Independence Institute. But first, let's play what Mr. Biden just said the other day about cannon ownership.
Remember, the Constitution, the Second Amendment, was never absolute. You couldn't buy a cannon when the Second Amendment was passed. You couldn't go out and purchase a lot of weaponry.
Dave, it is so nice to hear you. Dave, your reaction to what the commander-in-chief just said about what you could and could not do when the Second Amendment was ratified.
He's disconnected from reality. And that's been going on for a long time. He started telling this thing about cannons back in the campaign trail in the Democratic primaries. The Washington Post, which is not the most pro Second Amendment newspaper out there, did a fact check on it by Glenn Kessler and said it was completely false. And then when Biden repeated it again, they did the fact check again, and this time they gave him the maximum score of 4 Pinocchios for his brazenness in telling this lie, even after he's been called out on it. But obviously nothing stops him. I mean, the Washington Post is not the only place that's fact checked this. There's nobody in this country other than Joe Biden I know of who actually believes this. You know, you can have your pro or con views on gun policy and things like that. But the laws that existed as of 1791, when the Second Amendment was ratified, are pretty well known. You know, they're now on public databases and anybody can look it up. And there was not in any of the 13 states or in nationally, federally, any limitation on what kind of arm a person could own.
Dave, there must be some genesis of this lie. What is the genesis?
You know, sometimes politicians tell you something and you realize it's like one of those games like, you sit in a circle with your friends at school, and one person starts something, and then you go around the circle by whispering in the ear, and by the time it's gotten around to the other end of the circle, it's changed completely. So it'd be nice if we could at least say Biden has some misunderstanding of something that had something to do with reality, but it's just not there. The anti-gun groups that do their own research on historical gun laws and make their arguments, they don't make any claim that there was any ban on particular types of weapons anywhere in the United States as of 1791. Mm-hmm. So I think President Biden just made this thing up himself. It sounded good to him, and in that sort of hermetically sealed mind of his, contrary facts can't penetrate, even when the Washington Post says you're wrong.
Dave, where is the Governance Disinformation Board when you need it? And I want to ask you about the 18-year-old Uvalde mass killer, the 18-year-old Buffalo mass killer. What so-called, quote, common sense law, close quote, in your view, Dave, would have stopped either of these shooters?
Nothing that's getting proposed by the gun ban groups. I mean, New York State has all the laws, that are being talked about to be imposed nationally, and then some. So it's hard to see what could have been done. Now, red flag laws, which are something I support and have testified for in Congress twice. I think the red flag laws that have proper due process protections are a good idea. New York's got a red flag law with very weak to non-existent due process protections, and that could have been used against the Buffalo killer, but it wasn't. He'd been talking about perpetrating a school shooting. He was put on a involuntary psychiatric evaluation. So the red flag law was there, but it wasn't used, which is what we find out so often is the case. That the laws were there, but nobody used them.
Dave, as you know, this does not happen in the state of Israel. The teachers are armed, the staffers are armed. How do you feel about hardening the target and allowing districts where teachers and staffers want to arm? Well,
I think it's a wonderful idea, and it's been quite successful. At the Independence Institute, one of the programs we sponsor is something called Faster Colorado, which is a program that was started in Ohio, Faster Ohio. Faculty, administrative, I always forget the acronym, but it trains willing school teachers and other school staff in how to defeat an active shooter. It's a 3-day course that is taught by professional law enforcement trainers. It first of all teaches one aspect of emergency medicine, which is how do you keep a gunshot victim alive long enough so that the ambulance can arrive and then start providing more advanced care. And second, how do you defeat one or more active shooters? And the teachers are trained in the same techniques that the law enforcement instructors teach police officers about how to beat active shooters. And to graduate from a faster class, the teacher or the staffer has to demonstrate a level of firearms proficiency that exceeds what is required in Ohio or Colorado to become a certified law enforcement officer. Mm-hmm. So over the years, thousands of teachers in many, many different districts have received this training. There's never been any instance of gun misuse by one of these teachers. And there's never been even an attempted school shooting at schools that are protected by faster trained teachers.
Mm-hmm. Dave, we're just about out of time, but I do want to get your quick comment. The day following Uvalde, the next day on a Wednesday, a man with an AR-15 went to a graduation party. He was angry, and he was intent upon shooting it up. According to local authorities, about 25 to 30 people could have been injured, if not killed. A woman there with a CCW permit engaged the shooter, shot him several times, and he died. Again, but for her courage and valor, who knows about the slaughter? Very little coverage about this.
That is true. You know, the mass shootings that get national and international media attention are the ones where the criminal was able to kill a lot of people, when the ones that are prevented by a good citizen don't make the news. You know, the amount of attention that's come to this West Virginia one is actually unusual, relatively speaking. And, you know, in Colorado in 2009, a criminal went to the New Life church in Colorado Springs, which is a mega church, a huge amount of people packed in the sanctuary. And he went in and came in highly armed, ready to kill. He'd already killed 4 other people earlier that day in Denver, shot 2 people outside on the lawn or in the parking area. And when he came into the church, he was engaged and stopped by Janie Assam, who was a former police officer and was serving as volunteer security at the church that day. And the pastor said she probably saved over 100 lives. And so the New Life thing was something that's known in Colorado, but really hardly anywhere else other than that. And it just goes to show that guns in the right hands save lives. Guns in the wrong hands are very dangerous. So a sensible gun control policy is to encourage and certainly not to thwart the law-abiding people to be able to have arms to protect themselves and others, and at the same time try to prevent the dangerous people from having arms.
Well, Dave, we're going to leave it there. I'm sure we'll be expecting a correction and retraction from Joe Biden any moment now. Dave, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
You got it. Now, please switch over to Epoch Times to continue watching the live version of the show. We'll be right back. When we come back, we're going to talk to Gordon Chang about what Biden said about defending Taiwan in the event that Taiwan gets invaded, a statement that he then walked back. That and more. Don't go away. People have been asking me, what have you been doing with your life since the election? Well, the truth is I've been enjoying life, riding my bike around town.
Oh, they're not wearing a mask.
I've taken up a little bit of fishing as well.
Elder kills innocent fish.
And I've been posting on social media. Oh, come on. Listen, if you're tired of the censorship as I am, I've actually got some great news for you. Check out EpochTV.com. It's a brand new censorship-free video platform where you'll find not only my show, but other deep documentaries, great content, and honest movies that bring you the news without all the spin and the false narratives. So, check out EpochTV.com. I'll see you there.
Elder wastes